Hey, this is Shane from Green Hills Guitar Studio, and I've got another couple lessons for you today. This series is cool blues with some chord inversions. This is a pretty fun one, and I'm kind of gonna break it down for you and show you how I would approach it, and actually kind of talk about some mistakes I made when I was learning stuff like this as well, to kind of help you maybe learn it faster, be more efficient, and maybe not be so overwhelmed by everything you see on the PDFs. So I thought it would be good. I've been focusing on a lot of rhythm stuff in the last handful of courses, and we've done some dominant 7 chord exercises, and you can find those in the All Access library on the website. There's a half bar chord course, and then some dominant 7 courses, one for intermediate players as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a standard 12-bar blues, and I'm going to show you some options with some chord voicings and some inversions that can keep the momentum of the progression going, and it keeps it, pretty interesting, where you're not just sitting there, playing like this kind of dominant 7 thing, but we're going to break it down where we'll invert some of the chords. So sometimes the flatted 7th is in the root, or the lowest note, and sometimes it's the 5th, sometimes it's a 3rd. And what that does is it gives you options. So it doesn't, my hope is that you'll take some of these chords out of context and start using them in your playing. Whether you're playing a 12-bar blues or not, this is really important information to know, because it helps you map out the fretboard and see the neck in a different way, because we are inverting chords. And then also what it does is it shows you some pretty cool voice leading that gets you in and out of the chords in a pretty smooth way, and I'll show you some of that as well. But to get started, let's talk about how to approach learning something like this. So it can be pretty overwhelming when you look down at the music and you see all these, different chord diagrams, and chances are that, there's a fair amount of the chords that you don't know. So what I do when I learn something like this for the first time is I kind of scan it real quickly, and I'm looking for chords, voicings that stay the same. So if you look in measure 1, that A7 chord with the G in the bass, that's going to pop up later at the bottom of the page, and then we will use that for our D7 and our E7 chords as well. So that voicing will get used a couple times, and that'll be true with some of these other ones that you look at on the page. So we're going to take these chords and move them around, and you'll be able to reuse some of the shapes. The trick is going to be knowing where you are on the neck and how that relates to the underlying chord, how the chords function, and how you see it. So this A7 chord, if we take it and we, kind of chop it, you get this. You get that chord. The flatted 7th of the chord is the lowest note. So you do get a different sound, you get a different voicing. And this is a pretty cool sound. With that flatted 7th against the 3rd like that, the major 3rd. And this shape, this next one you probably know from the C7 that we just move up, but I'm looking for, this is my root. And then we just half step down into the 4 chord. Right? Now, if you can see this D chord, we can put a flat 7 on it right here. So now we're taking that D chord with the flatted 7th, and we're playing it like that. And it's a pretty nice transition right here. We've got this D7 with the 5th of the chord, the A, as the low note. We'll use that A to get into our A7. So this is the root of the A7. It's the fifth of the D7. So it's important to at least start looking for shapes that you already know, how to find them, and maybe we're chopping them down here. Or if you're learning new chords, the reason I wrote the chart out where it says A/G and I wrote the inversions in, I wanted you to see on the guitar part what the name of that lowest note is in the chord. Maybe the bass player's not playing it or the keyboard player in the recording, but I want you to see what the name of that note is. So let's just take a look at these first couple bars. So A7, when I look down at my hand, I know that's a G note. I know it's part of this chord that I know, and I know that's an A note. I know this is my major third. But if I were you, I would try to see that chord shape and this being in the middle of it. So I see this G, and I know that's an A7 with a G in the bass. When I go here, I know that's an E flat, 7, and then I slide that down. It's my D. When I go to this chord, I know in the middle on the 3rd string, 7th fret, that's a D note. So I'm targeting that as I'm looking at the neck and trying to figure out where I'm going. I'm looking for that D, and I know this is a flat 7. And then I also know that this chord shape, this next A7, all we've done is take this D7 shape that you already know. We usually play it like that, right? We play that voicing. Well, if you play it with these fingers and you slide it up and your first finger's on an A, you've taken that D7 shape and just moved it up. But this is important. This is your root note, that A. If you move it up, it's a B flat. If it's here, it's a C. So I'm always looking down at that first finger and knowing where I am. Okay? And then when I go up to this next chord in measure 4, I know my first finger's in A. So I'm going from this A to this A. So this beginning sounds like 4 chord. Now we're going to take that 4 chord, put a 7th, flatted 7 on top, and we're in the same fret. There's our A7. Now we're going to invert that A7. Now my lowest note's a C sharp. So I went from this A to this C sharp. Remember, this is my A. So those are the things I'm looking for, and I know this sounds like a lot. But if all you do is grab one of these notes and pay attention to it, like the flat 7, and you can find it and name it and see how it relates to the chord. Or when you get up here, if you're looking for that C sharp or you're looking for this A, just pick one note for now. You don't have to get overwhelmed with all of this. What I did, I would memorize all these chord shapes, and then I would try to memorize like a whole thing like this. But I didn't understand why it was working or what the connections were. And if I had to move it to a different key, I was trying to take something I memorized and just shifting it around. And not having any relation to the neck or the inversions or the theory or where these shapes came from, it caused me a lot of frustration. So hopefully just taking this in pieces and trying to realize some of this stuff as you play it, that's going to help you out. You don't have to learn the whole piece at once. I would actually start at the beginning and work my way maybe up to bar 5 on that D7/C. So to be this, A7/G, A7, A7 with a C sharp, right there. That's a D7 with a C in the bass. So I would practice just that chunk over and over, and I wouldn't worry about moving on yet. I would just work out those moves, try to name those lower notes. So we have a G. I'll just play the lowest note of each chord. that first chord, G, E flat, D, A for that D7. Stay on the A. We have an A7. Move up to a C sharp and an A, right? Because we're looking for that A and that C sharp. Okay, so those are the things I'm looking for. And then this is the chord we started with. Now we're just playing it at the 11th fret. So it's an E flat 7 to a D7. So we've moved that chord. And that's the first chord of bar 5. Now we're up here at this D7. What I'm looking for in the next D7, my third finger on the 4th string is a D. So I look for that, and it's a D7 slash A. And if you look closely at this chord, it's just an E chord. We've taken this E chord, and we've moved it up, and then we put a flat 7 on the top. Just like if you were down here playing a regular E chord, and put the flat 7 on there. So we're moving chords that you already know, maybe fingering them a little differently and playing them on different places of the neck. So you have this D7, and then we have this E chord shape, and we put our pinky down at the 13th fret. That's a D7 with an A. Now this one's kind of a stretch. This one's in measure 6. When I'm trying to get from here to that next chord, I'm looking for a D note, and that's at the 7th fret. And that gives us this chord. That D7 slash F sharp. Now remember, earlier when I said this D7, I key in on that D note. Well, that's the same D note I'm looking for this chord in measure 6. And then this D7, you probably already know. All we've done is taken this A7 chord, open A7, and we move it up, and we add a bar. And then that D7 that we were playing up here, where I was keying in on this D note, if we take that and slide that all the way back here, same chord shape. Now I'm keying in on this A note. So D7, A7. And then we're right back here. And then you already know this chord. Okay, so far we have this first section. See right there, my first finger went to that D. This chord shape, bar 7, beat 3, that's the same chord we did up here where I said it's like the E with the pinky. That's what's going on right here. But the E is the lowest note. So here's my A7. It's still my A7, I'm just not playing the low A. So I'm looking for that E note. Here's an E7. If I move it up, it's an A7. It's pretty cool sounding inversion. So those are some of the things that I look for. Is what's the root note? What fingering do I need to use to make this as smooth as possible? If I'm inverting a chord like this, I know that's a C sharp. And if you know your power chords, when you play a C sharp power chord, that's always a C sharp. So now we're just using it as part of this A7 chord. That note name doesn't change. It's still a C sharp. So, like I'm saying, just grab one of the notes and learn its name. And that's why I wrote the slashes in with that note name. So if you're looking for this A or this C sharp, at least you've got a starting place to start memorizing this stuff. There's that same chord for E. So A7 with a C sharp, D7 with an F sharp, E7, that's my E, with a G sharp. So we've taken this shape and just moved it around. So those handful of shapes really repeat through the first part of this tune, and we're using them for the A7, the D7, and the E7. Now, another thing that I did when I was trying to figure this out, and it's a good thing I did it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was trying to make sense of this stuff. So I would just play the low note of the chord, of each chord. And I'd hear those little half step movements like that, and they would catch my ear, and I would just play that chord, those two chords over and over, like, oh, D7, A with the C sharp. And I would start to hear those little half step movements. When we invert chords, we cause movement, and we cause some tension and then some resolve. So if you're a lead player trying to make sense of the neck, this is a really great way to go about it. If you're a rhythm guitar player and you're kind of stuck in the standard blues thing, you know, or those kind of chords, this is a great way to start opening it up, and it makes a 12-bar blues sound much more interesting. And then you can grab any of these chord shapes and just insert them in different songs. This is always going to be an A7, move it up, B7, right? You can always move it around. So you can practice this in context, out of context. The idea is to be able to utilize this information in other places. Okay, now when we get to measure 11, this is where we start kind of getting into the turnaround and wrapping things up. So this A chord, this is part of this bar chord. It's like if we take our F and we move it up to the 5th fret. So here's an A. Now listen what happens to this chord when you put a flat 7 on it. It wants to move. That flat 7 causes some tension. So we went. So it's a pretty interesting low note movement. 5 chord, this A7, and we put a flat 7 on the top with the pinky. Notice how that kind of gives it some more bite. Okay, so just kind of recap here. Learn this in pieces. Even if you just work on a measure or two at a time, that's completely fine. It's important to take your time and start to hear the inversions. What makes the chord want to move? Where does it feel like it gets a little stable? What causes it to move again? And just piecemeal it together. You don't have to plow through the whole piece, okay? All right, so if you want to find these PDFs and all the backing tracks, you can just go to the website, greenhillsguitarstudio.com. Sign up for our newsletter. We send out a newsletter every week with a bunch of tips, lesson ideas, kind of special offers, things that don't always hit the website but wind up in our newsletter. So that's a really good resource. So sign up for our newsletter, and I can get you these PDFs and the backing tracks as well. And then also check out our new content library that we just launched. All of this stuff will be located on the in the library as well.